All right, all set?
All right, so there are a couple changes. You should notice that the budget has dropped by just under $285,000.
The default or proposed?
Both. So I've been working with our legal counsel. As you are well aware, we have various CBAs on the warrant article this year. And the way the default budget works, those increases, unless there's an evergreen clause or language revolving around them continuing, remain in status quo. So I wanted to make sure that that was the case prior to removing them. In working with legal counsel, that is the case, so they have been removed out now. And their entire increase will be reflected in the warrant articles for those unions. In addition to that, if you look at the tax calculation sheet, you'll see that I have added the traffic unit as we discussed at the last meeting, as well as the Beautify Londonderry signs for $20,000, with $10,000 being raised through fundraising and donations. Other than that, it remains status quo from last meeting.
Does everyone know what an evergreen clause is?
Great question. Go ahead, John.
So in our collective bargaining agreements, there's something called an evergreen clause. If you have an evergreen clause in the contract, it would mean that if a contract didn't pass by the voters and was not accepted, or if it was something that where you did not come to a agreement to be able to put forth to the voters, the evergreen clause would kick in, and then whatever is in the contract would continue. I think we only have one contract that has an evergreen clause. So out of the 7 contracts we have, only one has an evergreen clause, which means is that what he's saying is that we have to fund whatever is going to go through the CBA through the voters first before we can put it in the budget. So whatever came forward in wages from last year during a contract year has to be zeroed out and has to be re-voted on, can't go into this budget. And will only come forward when the voters approve the budget. So the dollars, since there's no evergreen clause, the dollars that exist in a current contract don't exist going forward.
Sarah, you going to say something?
Just to clarify, their positions and their wages are in the budget. They just do not get a raise. So if they were moving a step, they do not move that next step because their contract is now out of a contracted term. So their positions and whatever they're making currently are in the budget. Their steps or anything else that they would be guaranteed, like a merit increase or anything, that is not. That would be in the warrant article for the CBA.
Okay.
So that's why it dropped. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
That was excellent. That's why it dropped $285,000.
And like I said, I wanted to verify with our legal counsel before doing that, where removing it I feel is an easier offer to the taxpayers than trying to put it back in if I was incorrect in that assumption.
Okay.
And also to clarify, you'll see as you go through departments that salaries have gone down. That's why. Just please note some departments are not on CBA or do not have employees that have CBAs in negotiation. So for instance, police and fire, those negotiations are not in session right now. They have a valid contract for next fiscal year. So you won't see the savings or the decrease in there because their contract is still going on. And then you also have employees who are non-rep, so they are not part of a bargaining unit. So their contract is still ongoing as if it would continue year after year with those appropriations.
Great explanation. Thank you. Ron,
So
you
in
gonna
other
say-
words, if they approve the CBAs at the ballot, that $285,000 is going to go up from where it is. I don't know what that number is going to be, but it's going to go up.
Would the amount that we see on the warrant article be an additional tax per year, or would it just be for the duration of that?
Nope. So what happens is we would take the increase of that CBA and we would cost out how much it would cost each year.
Okay.
If that CBA is approved by the voters, then that automatically becomes default for the next years.
Okay, and the amount that's in the warrant article would be the total amount of the contract?
We would break it out by fiscal year.
Okay.
With, essentially the assumption that after that first fiscal year, it's an estimate because people leave and everything of that.
Got it, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? Budcom? Council? Sean's got his reading glasses on.
Yeah.
Getting old.
Yeah, I don't need them yet.
You're more virile than me.
Anything from the department heads, Justin?
So one of the items, as we discussed tonight with the Christmas lights, or with the holiday lights, is we put 20,000 in the town common line in the budget. I'm not sure if we want to discuss lowering that or removing it completely, but I just want to bring that to your attention as well, since it will now be donated for at least this year. I'm not sure what the plan you guys have for next year is, but that money is in there and could potentially be decreased because the town common historically has gone over with other expenses,
Right.
but the majority of that was intended for the holiday lights on the
Let's say
common.
put it back to where it was.
Which was the 20K.
Well, I may have I'd like to ask the council a question.
Sure.
The question I'd like to ask the council is that we have gone through 2 meetings and everything, and then we have put a number of proposals out there of things that are possible or not possible. I would like to ask the council if it might be appropriate for us to take a breath and step back a little bit and let the budget committee do their thing and let them come back to us with recommendations versus us continuing to drive the
I
conversation.
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it's more or less what I was stating at the beginning. Yes, I'd like to see that.
Yeah, it was what you said. I just, more of a reminder.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, and they're here for a reason, and to back what both of you said. I definitely would like to hear some feedback on when you have your meeting, and your committee comes together and provide some suggestions. I know Sean talked about it. John talked about it, so I'm good with that. Council, we're good.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, so we have some questions that we had, some we asked last week. Feels like longer than a week ago.
For you.
Yeah, some we didn't get to, and I'm sure that budget committee members have questions that maybe aren't on this list. But we had some questions kind of specifically on certain lines in each department. For example, I'll just start from the top. The town manager's office, one of the members said, what accounts for the 6% increase in salaries in the default budget? Are those contracted increases? Some of these may be specific things. Justin, I apologize.
So some of that has been removed because you'll see, based on what we just said, some of those employees are on CBAs that are being negotiated.
Okay.
So some of their salaries are status quo, meaning
Okay.
that they've been put back to what they're earning right now.
Okay.
So it's a 5.3% increase now.
Some of those employees also are not on CBA, so a non-rep employee is eligible for a 5%. So a certain amount of that is merit, and a certain amount of that is COLA. So each department has a list of employees. You should have it in your binders, and they're all based on different, whatever union they're part of. Or, for instance, like a non-rep is someone who's not part of a union.
And we discussed this last year, that those town employees that are town hall specific employees that are not in a union are eligible for a COLA and up to 2.5% merit or something like
So
that?
the COLA is tied to the Boston Regional CPI, and the merit is up to 2.5%.
Okay.
And the cap on the COLA is 3%. It's not unlimited. There's a cap on it as well, which is why you're getting about the 5.5.
Makes sense. You want me to just go on to the next one?
It's your meeting.
Okay.
Rolling with it.
All right, so there's a 54% increase in salaries, again, town manager's office, from 2023 actuals to 2026 default.
Yeah, so we back during that time we had an assistant town manager / HR director.
Okay,
So we now have them separate, where it's assistant town manager and director of economic development, and then an HR director as well. So you'll see that increase as why.
okay. Ryan, do you want to take those recommended reductions under town manager's office?
Sure. So I was just looking at I think we talked a lot about right-sizing budgets over the last couple meetings, which is great, but the right-sizing is always going up. We're not taking a look at bringing any expenses down. So I wanted to identify some, they might be low-hanging, small ticket items, but just any dollar amount counts. We've been
Absolutely.
arguing over $10,000, $15,000 bills the last couple weeks. So I think any number, so I was looking at line items that have not met the proposed budget for 2026 over the last 3 years of actuals, from 22 through 24. So the first one, printing services. We haven't exceeded $6,000. We're budgeting 10. I recommend,
Which department?
sorry,
Town
town
manager.
manager.
These are all in the town manager's office?
These, yeah, I think we're going to go department by department. So six, we haven't spent more than 6. We're budgeting 10. Recommend bring that down to $6,000. Dues and subscriptions, we haven't spent more than 50 and a half. We're budgeting 58 and recommending to bring that down to 52. Travel and mileage,
1,000?
yep.
Thank
Fif-
you.
Travel and mileage, we haven't spent more than $783. We're budgeting $2,900. I'm recommending bring that down to $1,000.
Sorry, give me 1 second here. I will, I'll take a look into that. You're right, looking at it, we have not, so we could look at, decrease that or move it to the more appropriate line that we're overexpending within that budget.
Okay?
So in other words, what you just said is that you're not gonna decrease anything, you're gonna put it someplace else.
If there are,
Justin?
nope, you're not wrong. Here's the thing, as we've discussed with the other items, we may overspend another line and then essentially freeze that line so we don't spend it because we've already spent it in a separate line. So what I'll do is I'll take a look to see where we've overspent, see if it makes sense to move it to there or to cut it completely if we are in line with it, if that works for you.
Yeah, I think,
I mean, I think we have both goals. We want the lines correct. But it would be nice, those numbers cut, I don't know what, one was $4,000, one was, I think $5,000. We cut those, fixing those 3 things potentially reduces the number by $10,000. And I know that's, again, not a big number, but Ryan's right. We've been talking about the small numbers add up. So, if we're getting the other lines right-sized, he's got a good point that we could correct these in a positive direction.
I think our 2024 actuals are $670,000. We're budgeting $790,000 at the department. That's what, a 33% increase?
Sorry,
Two
can you
years.
repeat that?
I'm saying the 24 actuals was $669,000. We're budgeting $790 in 2026. It's about a 33% increase. So I think the department has some fluff in
And
there.
you're saying the majority of that increase is coming from adding an additional position
Correct.
at a high level?
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Because if you look, the budget for salaries was 417 and it moved to 538. And that's because of the additional salaries or the additional personnel in that department that we moved into there from either other departments or by adding it to the town's budget. But in terms of what you're saying with the other ones, like I said, I'll take a look. Because if you're looking, management services for town manager has been overspent on average, looking at the last 5 years, by 11,000. Yes, in 24 it was underspent, but we were in a freeze for 5 months of that. 23 was underspent as well, but 22 was overspent by 23,000. What I would do is I'd likely take that out and look at the other ones to see where they are. And like I said, if we're not using those buffers to cover places that we are overspending, we can remove it. But I would like to talk about potentially moving it to the appropriate line before we talk about removing it completely, because if we move it because it's not being spent, but we're still overspending a line, where it's hurting the budget in that
Yep.
aspect. So that's what I meant when I said I take a look at where we're overspending for that.
Fair.
Yeah, I'm saying we agree with both ideas. Yes, let's get the other lines correct.
Yep.
You know, but if we
But
can.
no, you're right. In this case, and
Right.
utilities is one where I've looked and I've adjusted between them. But I will take a look at your recommendations with this as well. As my guess is a majority of them are in that area, and I will apply the same concept if that works for the budget committee.
Okay,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
so we have similar questions and comments for other areas.
Let's keep it going.
Okay,
Oh, I'm not ready yet.
okay, you know,
We're still on town manager.
go on,
correct?
town manager, go ahead,
Okay.
sorry.
So as Sean mentioned, I also do want to take a look at what it would take to take 4% off of this, and that would be total. That would be $31,000. Is there any way that we could do that? That's my question.
That would be difficult, but I would take a look.
Okay. I'm going to answer.
So that's the other question for, I guess, Sean on that one. Is it 4% from the proposed, 4% from 25, 4% from the default?
I did default. That's where my calculation came from.
Yeah.
And is it flat across the board or per department?
Just wanted to see what it looked like, informational. Like I said, we did informational the other way. I'm just curious on, and I'm not, and as with the other one, I'm not intending that to be, oh, I realistically think we can. It's just sometimes when you go through that exercise, you find things that it's like, oh, okay, that presents itself. And I certainly don't think it'll present itself in every department, but I'm just. we
Okay,
went
so
through the
by
other-
department then.
Well, I think 4% across the board gives you more leeway to find the savings.
Actually, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's right. If it gives you more leeway, you're right. Yeah.
That's fair.
Can we remove debt service from that calculation?
Can I?
Can I remove debt
Oh, yeah,
service from
yeah.
that calculation?
Debt
'Cause-
service is a.
Okay, that we can't change. Copy that.
Can I ask a question? Is it 4% off the total operating budget or 4% off the total net to be raised?
Operating.
Because if because we have 44.6 million over the general fund appropriations, but then after we take in revenues from the general fund and from the sewer, the net to be raised is 27.7. So,
Yep.
so you want it from the 44.6, not the 27.7?
Yep.
Okay.
And what's that total number of 4%, if you don't mind?
It's just under 1.7 million. Removing debt service.
Well, 40 million is 1.6. What are you over default by? 800,000?
Less than that now.
It was almost about 8, wasn't it?
822,000.
So you've got to come in $800,000 below default for 3 or 4%.
Correct.
Yes, but not all of that savings necessarily has to come from the proposed budget. Some of it could come from what we put out and what we suggest in warrant articles, right? Like, I'm sorry, can you guys hear me?
No, actually, that would be good too, to make it more
Right, like
flexible.
you said the town budget's what, $44 million? How much do we then tack onto that with warrant articles?
Well, I disagree with that. That's such a variable, right? I don't like that. I like the
Well-
straight 4%.
Because if you tack on that money, the amount of 4% goes up if you tack on the warrant articles. But I think it does give flexibility in going, in being able to do it. So
Right, I mean, I think a 4% reduction is a 4% reduction because looking at the total, right?
Yeah, yeah. So if you add that, you're adding more money by adding the warrant articles, but then that adds to the 4%.
And I'm not saying we can pull that off. I'm just saying if we're going to look at it, you know,
Yeah.
So if you want to reduce 4%, that's $8,000 an employee. I'm not saying don't do it or do it or not, but that's what the numbers say.
we're on the town manager's office.
Yep.
Okay, moving on to the town clerk's office then. So there's a 3.8% increase in salaries in the default budget. Those are all contracted, correct?
Correct, and the new version, they would have been removed.
Okay, great, sorry. And some of these were developed last week.
Nope, that's fine.
2.3 now.
2.3 now. Okay, thanks, Ryan. What accounts for the 40% increase in salaries from 2023 actuals to 2026 default in the town clerk's office? And just to throw that out there, the town manager's office was a 54% increase from 2023 to 2026, and I get that we added additional staff. But then we had a 40% increase in the town clerk's office from 2023 to 2026. Those are both pretty significant.
Go ahead, Sarah.
A lot of that is CBA regulated, so they move on their steps based on the CBA that was passed.
Did we add staff in the town clerk's office in the last 3 years?
I know we added, in the last 2 years, one person from part-time to full-time. And we still have one part-time clerk.
And then when you move someone from part-time who does not have benefits to
Exactly.
full-time, then they have benefits.
They
This
become
doesn't-
eligible for benefits.
This doesn't include benefits. This is just salaries.
Right, but to that point, you are correct. When you do move someone from
Just for
part-time to, for clarification, they are eligible for benefits, including NHRS.
I wasn't trying to, I just wanted to be clear.
Oh,
Yeah.
we had somebody out on FMLA last year. So they would not have been paid through the salaries, which is why the actuals is lower.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. But still, that's, yeah, and then we move somebody from part-time to regular, which is why you'll see, so the total from the budget is 293, 859 to 324, which is moving somebody from part-time to full-time. The actuals are off because we had somebody out on FMLA.
Okay. Can you speak to overtime in the town clerk's office?
So the request for the increase, or,
What is the overtime line in the town clerk's office?
so we're requesting 6,500 for that. That is to assist with the new process to comply with DOL regulations, in which should somebody stay, 5 minutes past, we have to pay them for those 5 minutes. We had a DOL individual come in and alert us of all that information in a not so friendly way.
What would cause them to stay in a
The Department of Labor was given a tip. They came here and they investigated us. Someone called it in.
And what would cause overtime? I assume, is there lines at
Yep.
when?
So they have to close out and reconcile their, I believe it's called a till, but essentially their cash register to make sure everything's there. If it takes them a little longer, if there is an issue with the reconciliation, or if they have somebody that is there a little bit longer, which causes them to then stay a little bit longer to reconcile it, as well as they will, they're part of the election process. So when they're working over there past their initial 8 hours, it's overtime. As well as should they come for like the rabies clinic or other items such as that, it would be considered overtime.
I think the thing you have to include is when we were going through the CBAs,
Yeah.
we have certain groups that their hours are written into the CBAs.
Yes. So the clerks as well, their CBA, anything over 8 hours is overtime. So you can't have somebody work 10 hours on Monday and then 6 hours on Tuesday. That 10 hours, those two would be
They
overtime.
can't flex their time.
Correct.
Okay. I think I know the answer to this one, but you reduced the MGMT line, the management services line, by $13K. We talked about that last year, that we wanted to try and get some things out of that management services
Yeah.
line and into other places. That's why it went down, because you are correcting those lines.
Correct.
Okay.
I moved that, and I'll be honest, the largest chunk I believe is in postage, which historically has been significantly overspent. It's postage as well as we do the billings. So the tax billings gets charged to management services. They charge us for envelopes and postage to send them all out. That is also being moved to the postage line, so it'll be charged to there going forward.
Ryan, you want to take those recommended reductions?
Sure. Dues and subscriptions, recommending to reduce that to $150 from $595. We didn't spend anything in 2024. Travel and mileage, we haven't spent more than $1,800, so I'm recommending bringing that down to $2,000.
Oh, I got Ryan.
Yes.
And then that answers your answer about the management services going down by 13K. We were also asking why posted went up 19K. So it seems like those go
That's-
together.
Yep.
Okay. And what accounts for the 2K addition of general expense supplies to the voter registration division?
So that's one where, again, taking it from, so what I took from management services when I went through, we determined what it was. It's been historically overspent. This is, to be honest, it's general expenses because that's the best language I can come up with it. It's random expenses that occur during an election cost. The stickers, the hand sanitizer, essentially all those little things you see we have to pay for, and that's essentially where we decided to put that because I didn't think it fit under office supplies, and I wanted to move it out of management services. So general expenses felt more descriptive, even though it's not really that descriptive.
I do have a question. What play did the budget freeze come? How did the budget freeze come into play with these reductions as well?
So, are you talking about just last year, obviously?
Yeah.
Essentially, depending on which line you look at, every department was required to minimize any type of discretionary spending as possible to allow for that, to allow for the difference between the appropriation and what was expended.
Okay.
That way, should an emergency have happened in May or June, we're not pushing up against the appropriation line, and we have that to be able to still provide the safety services that we need without having to worry about the budget.
Would that cause or be the driver for some of those reductions or dips?
It likely could be, but I'm guessing that they're not just looking at last year. And like I said, I'll take
Looking
a,
at the average over
Right,
three.
right.
yeah.
Okay.
But please keeping that in mind with everything that if you look at last year, 5 months, we were frozen.
Okay. All right, go ahead, Patrick.
Anything else on town clerks? Okay. Finance department. We wanted to cut all the staff in the finance department. No,
I'm for it. Let's go.
Planning to volunteer here?
I already am volunteering.
I meant full-time.
No,
Hey Pat,
the last one's off the ship. No way.
can we pivot to a department who's here? It'd be nice to get some people out of here.
Okay, fair enough. The list gets a little shorter as we get further down the line here. Well, we already talked about the library position last week, and we asked, could we make one of the part-time positions full-time instead of adding an entire full-time? Well, maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. I thought I did.
We did, yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought hi everybody, getting late. I thought the ask was, could the warrant article that we're requesting, which is for a full-time children's librarian, could that position be part-time instead? That was my understanding, unless I've misunderstood, and I apologize.
I mean, either way, I guess it's the same difference. Whether you add a part-time to handle the children's library services, or whether you take one of your current staff and to make them go from, and have them, offer them to go from part-time to full-time, is that something staff members will be interested in? Is that, what would work better for you?
Well, to be honest,
Full-time
the
librarian.
full-time children's librarian.
If you're planning, I get that. What would be Plan B?
Plan B could be a part-time children's librarian to have someone dedicated in that department. We struggle with that only because it might be hard to find someone with the qualifications for a part-time position. I think a lot of people are looking for full-time right now, especially in the library field I can speak to. So I think it would be hard to fill that position. If that was what the voters want or the request and the trustees approved it, we would, of course, entertain that option.
Okay. and the possibility of taking one of your part-timers and making them full-time. Where does that fall in your preferences?
Currently, the qualifications that we would need for the children's librarian, no one on staff has those qualifications right now. They would require it would require an MLS, which is a Master's in Library Science, and at this time, none of my staff members have that as a part-timers.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think a part-timer who went to college and then got their master's is willing to be doing this part-time.
I would love to have someone in the library that just wants to be there.
But that's not the job
service.
description.
But
That's not the job description.
We don't know that.
Well, to be honest,
We can
everybody
change that.
on my staff right now wants to be there, and I have a multitude of.
Oh, I agree with
I
you.
have a lot of staff members who would love to go full time, who are part time now, in even staying in their positions, not necessarily becoming full time librarians per se, the professional staff. They would love to go full time. I know that's not a possibility, but so I have to look at. What do I need to provide to the community to be able to continue to provide the services that we're providing? And
what's
in this
hindering
case, a full-time children's librarian would be able to do that. If it's going to be challenging for us to continue on the path of services, and those services are programming, outreach, all of that, with what we have right now. That's the struggle we have.
Erin, can I ask you a question in a different way?
Of course.
I'm just looking up on here. As an example, trying to find a town planner is very hard now because a number of the colleges have stopped having degree programs in that area. In the library sciences area, what are you experiencing and seeing as people going into that business? I mean, I can read what you got online here, but it sounds like while it's still popular, it is not as popular.
We have so the Master's in Library Science, for our field, has
Trying
changed.
to find somebody.
Yeah.
How hard is it to find somebody?
It is challenging to find somebody, but I think we're very fortunate where Londonderry does offer a very competitive salaries and very competitive benefits where people may be looking to that. If that were to change, I think we would have the same struggle as other libraries. There are other libraries that are still struggling to fill positions that they'd have open, similar to almost fire and police for a long time. And it's just the reality. And it comes down to pay and a lot of other factors, I'm sure, for those people that are applying for those positions. But there are still people getting degrees. The jobs out there are limited. And a lot of them have, to speak to the part-time, have gone to part-time because of the benefits, obviously, situation. And those positions are tough to fill because people need, obviously, full-time. And they need those benefits and salaries and all of that to go along with it as prices in other areas of lifestyles do go up. Groceries, cars, all of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I have a quick question. So I know in the software industry, we used to start off with people really wanted masters, and then they backed away from that and they went down to bachelors, and then they went down to associates. And now because the market is so starving for people to work in that, like I've hired people without degrees that are fine. So I don't know that this is your field. I don't know the intricacies of it, but is a master's absolutely required for this? And I'm just thinking of, in order to fill the position and things like that, is there any flexibility in that, or is that something that's absolutely must
So that's challenging because if I all of a sudden say I'm going to hire a children's librarian and I'm not going to give them a master's, all the other positions in my library now look ridiculous by having masters, right?
Gotcha.
So I think it lessens the quality of that position and the quality of service that person can provide and expertise that person can provide if I all of a sudden say, we don't need that degree.
Okay, so then it's not comparable to the others.
Right,
Okay.
right.
So, did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. I know that I think you mentioned in your speech that you gave that you're going to cut the furniture line, right? That's maybe like what?
Hypothetically.
So so that's going to be up to the trustees. That hasn't been decided yet. It's one of the things we've talked about because it's one of the things that was added when we proposed this budget. We added, I think it was $2,500.
Right, but we are responsible to oversee them too.
Of course.
Right? Like you're a separate form of government. You don't have as many checks and balances as the rest of the town. So I have seen a lot of spending that could not be spent, in my opinion, I have a whole list here. I'm not going to list them. I'm not here to publicly embarrass you. I'm just saying I've seen areas where there could be less spending.
Okay.
That's all.
Would you be able to share that with me so that I can share that with the trustees?
Absolutely, I will.
Okay. Because I would certainly entertain those suggestions.
Sure.
Good with the library? Okay, thanks, Aaron.
Okay, sure.
Well, let's go DPW. In the interest of trying to get people out of here. Okay. So, Dave, where are we at with making our salaries competitive with the private sector?
I'm gonna stop you here. This is part of the
Oh,
CBA
can't talk about it.
negotiation.
Okay. All right, then I got another.
Yeah, how,
I got it.
we're doing 4 contracts right now? 4, actually, there's a 5th, right?
5, yeah.
So in all of those, and the council is engaged in those conversations as part of collective bargaining and fair labor practices. We can't discuss them outside of the negotiating team.
Question. We'll have that done, right, by...
We're trying very hard.
Okay.
Everybody has to work together.
Okay, understood.
All right, unrelated to the bargaining agreement, Dave. How much of Recreation Department maintenance is currently completed by DPW? Sorry to put you on the spot with questions. We heard from the Recreation Department, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and what was going on there, and I was curious at the time, is how much of that is done by you guys?
Maintenance for recreation?
No, I mean like their fields, their facilities. Are you guys doing upkeep on that stuff?
No, they handle that all themselves. As far as the daily stuff like lawn mowing, fertilizer, and sprinkler systems and that, they handle that all themselves. Now, there's some things that come along that are a little bit, that require equipment that they don't possess, but we do. And so we will schedule, within our constraints to try and get over there and assist them, like some expansion around the playground this year. And then there's been more recently a situation where everybody kind of rallied the troops to get together to help out LAFA with a unsafe dugout. So things like that will help them with an assistant. But the general operational stuff, like keeping the parks clean, things like that, no, they're on their own.
I have a question on that, actually. It's a pretty small budget, right? Recreation. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I don't know. It seems like to me it's a good opportunity to almost like merge it all into one, right? You maintenance buildings, you'd also maintenance fields. I don't know what that look like.
So I will share with you that there have been some discussions about future planning and some of the struggles that we have with staffing, and is a little bit different in their regards, that they're all part-time positions. Those are hard to find. So typically they're running with, their average age, and, I'll say this with, some bit of fun with it, but, Art understands it too, that their staff is old. I think their average age is 68 years old. If we don't find that demographic to fill those needs for that small pay that they pay, they have their challenges just like we do. So there's been some discussions about future planning and crossovers, and could a full-time employee work in recreation doing the mowing and the weed trimming and things of that nature, and then in the winter come and plow for highway and things of that nature. So we've been exploring that, but there's a lot that has to go into that, and back and forth and job descriptions and whatnot. But we do see that as potentially something in the future that might have to be explored.
Okay. Yeah, we just mature that idea. That'd be great. Maybe, I don't know, maybe not this budget cycle, but future.
Yeah, that sounds really positive. Other questions for DPW?
One of the things, I know it's CBA related, so I don't really want to talk about it too much, but I think when I think about that, and I think about your budget line for training, I don't want to get to a week prior and then think about what happens if I don't have a retention clause in my CBA. I just want to have that conversation. Like, are we okay with paying salaries without a retention clause? Again, CBA, I don't want...
Again,
we can't talk
about
it.
That is a conversation that is being handled by the negotiating team.
Okay, I'll be quiet.
Hey, Cheerson. That's going to turn off.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
Who do you want to see next? Okay,
Fire?
police department. Oh, he said fire. Fire. Let's do fire. Oh.
Let's get up first. Come on. Come on down.
One of you two.
I am always ready to go.
Huh? Did you get the trophy yet?
Not yet, but I don't lose. It's a family thing he's asking me about, but I'll get it. Sir.
Budget committee, what do you have for the PD?
The first one I have is on the administrative division. There's a 15% increase on the new budget for salaries. What is that accounting for?
So, Chief Bernard previously had is it recording secretary? No, it's
Records clerk.
records clerk that we've transformed into a paralegal position. So if you look at the support division, you'll see a decrease in that aspect. So we moved it from support to administration.
Next question, Ryan, you're going to ask me is why did I do that? Right?
I'm good as long as the numbers work out, but go ahead.
So,
Ryan's trying to avoid getting pulled over.
And he has plenty of reasons. He worked with me very close on this to make sure that everything would continue as they planned and that there would be no hiccups down the road regarding it.
But it's essentially, is it a wash?
Nice.
yes, we did increase headcount. So we had a 42-year employee retire. We didn't fill the position right away. What we did is we took an approach to it to see where we could utilize that position or the funds from it. Do we fill with the records clerk, which is a lot of paperwork processing? Historically, that's what we used to do in the police department, a ton of paperwork. Now everything's gone over to more digital. So what we did is we looked at that, and when she retired, I asked her, and she said the same thing to me then, was that, hey, our role's different. So we didn't rush to fill it. We took our time. We put our brains together and came up with an idea and a plan. And that plan was to transfer the position or the body into an administrative line, as you pointed out, Ryan, to be the paralegal. So we just changed it from one union, put it into another, and repurposed the position rather than coming to you asking you for another whole body.
As well as you have to keep in mind the voters approved adding a prosecutor, which was also housed in that division.
Other questions for the PD?
Question. I'll risk getting pulled over.
Hey, if I pull you over, that's really bad. That's real bad.
I think you pulled one person over in the past year or two.
Yeah, and they probably almost ran me off the road, maybe.
You should hear the stories about when past chiefs pull people over. It's actually pretty funny because they'll radio in and say they've just pulled somebody over. The panic goes through, and every cop that's out there shows up at the scene going, Chief, I got this.
They think as we get older, we can't do the job anymore, but we still got it, sir.
Listen, you're not going to get an argument from me, sir.
All right, question. To be honest, I'm kind of torn on the traffic unit, right? Slow down Londonderry, right? Don't curse you to a traffic safety committee that doesn't have a power to do something, right? Yeah. But at the same time, we're sending money to Concord for what, right? I don't know if we can put our heads together and figure out something. Mm-hmm. I just kind of want a different alternative.
Yeah, so the approach of the traffic unit, if you would, was just that, as we talked about the first one. It was asked of us, what do we need to function? What more could we use, right? And that was one of the things that we hear from the police department is every resident in this town, and there are some behind me, who have spoke vocally and quite frequently about these concerns. Everyone, we all live on a road, and we all could share those concerns and complaints. And my thought was, well, after that research that we did, the 6.9 hours a week, how are we going to do any more than that? That's what we have available. And I don't say this to sound tongue-in-cheek, but I don't have other people to pull from. I'm not pulling cops out of the schools to protect our kids. I'm not pulling detectives out to stop victims from being victimized yet again by our poor planning. That ain't happening. So the only thing we do is we continue to field the complaints. We continue to put the officers out there when applicable, when we can, when staffing allows us to do that. We put them out there for 5 minutes. Sometimes it's 15 minutes. Sometimes they don't have it that one day to be out there. So that was why that was brought up as, how do you fix this? That's what I would do. If I'm asked, I'll give you the problem. I'm not sure, the solution to the problem. But at this moment, if you're telling me to hold off on that, no problem. I'll figure it out.
Let me ask you a question related to that, if you don't mind, Justin. Okay, so your full staff is 68.
Yep.
And we're at 63 right now?
Yep.
Okay. And so theoretically, these two positions for traffic safety, and I'm a proponent of it, are 69 and 70.
That could be, yeah.
What does it look like if you had just hired up to 68 because we've got your line squared away and you got interested parties and you get up to 68? How much does that traffic number go up? You said it's 6 hours a week. How much does that go up if we're at 68?
And that's the point I made, was that if we were to do that, we could probably do up to 80 hours a week. So we'd have 2 officers dedicated to just traffic alone. So what we wouldn't do is, if we're desperate, plug them in somewhere else. That would be their assignment. It would be like a tour. So much like days, afternoons, or mids, we would take all the data from the most complaints that we get, the time frames, and we would utilize those 2 bodies to cover down on that. So anytime these complaints came in to the PD from residents or the traffic safety committee, we would put to the supervisor and say, hey, could you, adjust this time frame for, team A and team B, whatever the 2 officers were, to handle that. So it wouldn't be, they're both riding around a car together Monday through Friday, 6 to 2. I would split them up to get the most out of the times on the road.
Okay, and then if we went that route, if that goes on the warrant and gets approved and you get the 2 additional spots specifically for that, are your next hires officers for that, or are your next hires officers to continue to get up to 68?
So that's a great question too. So I think this is one of those ones where, as the department head, we're able to manage the personnel that's under our discretion. And I would say that based on the severity and of the complaints that we get and how often, I would immediately get those next 2 up and running as a priority. Because filling the rest of the open positions have been that way because the lines have been neglected for 10 years or more. So I can't hire all those people until these things are straight. But if it was to be approved by the voters in March, come July, we would have staff. I could devote 2 of them to that, and then we would hire 2 more. So it's a replacement, if you would, right? So if I take 2 people out of patrol, then they would go into traffic. I would hire 2 more cops. So we're always trying to maintain the staffing levels that we know that we can appropriately fund without going over, so we don't get ourselves in a jam. And this is why we've been taking this 3 to 5 year approach with Justin on fixing it.
Agreed. And go ahead.
No, go ahead, and then I'll
Justin,
ask my question.
I saw on that. Hold on, I gotta get my reading glasses. I saw on here the 3. I'm looking at the wrong one.
You talking about the 2 increase one?
Yeah, 389.9. That is not in the operating budget. Question mark.
Are you talking about the warrant article?
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, yeah, that would not be in the operating budget. That's a warrant article that needs to be approved by the voters.
Okay, cool. I just saw in your tax calculation.
That is, that's separate from what is in the operating budget.
Number 22 on the front.
Yeah, I see it. Not very clearly, but I do see it. Anyway.
I can help you.
It's a little print.
Sure.
So, question. So, if we did add these 2 traffic officers, do the numbers include, cars? Would we need additional cars for these individuals?
We should be okay at the moment. Obviously, as you are probably well aware, we're getting a new fleet on our rotation. We also are very crafty with other vehicles that we don't have. Our cars get run 24/7 for the most part.
Yep.
But obviously, detectives don't work on the overnights. SROs don't work, on the overnight. So we would just shuffle some cars around. We have 2 motorcycles that are part of our lease program, so we would utilize those too.
Chief, I believe your captain has a comment.
No, I think that number.
Yep. So
that number includes 1 car, and it includes
right.
retrofitting the motors.
That's right.
So both
With the laptop?
Yeah, so both motorcycles will get the ability to do the MDT, which is the mobile data terminal, so they can do their e-crash and their e-ticketing.
Yep.
And then we did add one car in,
Yep.
because we've seen.
So that number would decrease in year 2 because we wouldn't be buying a car every single year.
Or we wouldn't be replacing the MDT mounts and the motors.
Right.
It's a one-time, one-out cost.
I believe it also includes their uniform and equipment.
Correct.
Okay,
Because it would be potential new hires.
okay.
Thank you for that. See, it's a good thing you have good wing people.
I have a
If I
question.
may,
Bring it on for Zoran.
Mr. Goldman, you made a comment. I know we made some jokes about stopping cars. The intent behind traffic enforcement is not to punish drivers or write tickets. We're not interested in funding the penalty assessment fee for the state of New Hampshire. The idea is that we're only dedicating 6.9 hours a week right now to a number of complaints. We want to address all these complaints. The intent here is to change driver behavior. Sometimes it's as simple as just stopping, that young kid and reminding them, hey, you got to slow down. This is a neighborhood. So if you looked at the ratio of tickets or citations to our stops, it's not significant. We're not out there hammering people with tickets. And I don't want anybody to be afraid if they're looking at this warrant article and they're making a good decision as to whether or not they think it's appropriate. This is not to generate revenue for the state of New Hampshire. That is not our intent.
It's to educate.
It's to educate, or it's our intent to address those concerns that are coming up through the public, through the Traffic Safety Committee.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. I have a question on your 30-mile-an-hour speed limit. I get that zoning, right?
It's council.
Council. Can I ask a citizen question, if that's okay? Yeah. Okay. I'm a map person.
Okay.
I like maps. I know I'm a nerd, right?
I think it's great. It's great. I don't have a problem
I'd
with
love to see, to really get behind that idea,
Mm-hmm.
like a map of where that policy would affect. And I'll be quiet.
Yeah, so I'll give you an idea. So last time I asked, I think it was 2 years ago, we had actually, Dave, we got 530 something roads now in town? Something like that, right? So 20 years ago when I got hired here, it was like 300 and something. So we've added a lot more roadway, and I think they all vary, and that's the hard part. And that's one of the things we've been talking about, Jason, was that, if it was a townwide 30, how much, I think it's more effective, right? Because now everyone comes into town, so wherever they would come into Londonderry from, any one of our bordering towns, they would see that Londonderry is a 30-mile-an-hour posted speed unless otherwise posted. So, except for the state roads, I know, John, as you were the chair, this was brought up probably 4 or 5 years ago, maybe. And I think that looking at it now,
We put it to the voters and asked for a reduction in speed, and it was defeated.
Significant.
So this is the point, right? Like, how do you fix that?
Right.
So you either enforce it, having a traffic unit or officers available. You take the townwide approach. You whack the speed limit down. I mean, I'll stand up here all day long and tell you the same thing. It worked on High Range. It's worked on Litchfield. Is it 100% perfect? No, but it's a lot better than it was.
It's a unilateral decision that can be made by the council.
Okay.
So if it's a town road, the council can decide to lower all town roads, with the exception of state roads, to whatever speed limit it is they decide.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So, not to talk for you, but to verify.
Mm-hmm.
So, what I believe I hear you say is that with the influx of traffic, there's been an increase of complaints.
I think
So
it's
you're
gotten a lot
looking.
worse than it has been historically.
So you're looking at a multifaceted, multi-pronged approach to help not just address those complaints,
Yeah.
but to address the root of the issue. Speeding.
Correct.
And lowering the speed limit is one of multiple. The traffic unit is another one of multiple steps that you feel is a solution from within your department, your control, your scope, or your lane.
Yeah.
As a solution to help mitigate that.
I think it's what the citizens of this community deserve. I think they deserve to be heard on these matters. They deserve to have it enforced with their tax dollars. And we just need to have both happen to work. So we need to reduce the speed in town. We can't control people coming through here, but we can control the speed limit. And if we have the officers out there to enforce these concerns that our residents have, I think we reduce risk, we reduce fatalities. Not to get off topic, but I was at a meeting last week, as the town knows, DOT, I was with Ron and Senator Carson, and DOT heard us loud and clear, thanks to these people like Senator Carson and Ron Dunn bringing this to the state level, and DOT is going to be reducing the speed limit on 102. So these are the things that with the proactive approach and the right people being our voice and the right people listening, together we can get these things fixed. So,
I do understand that reduction on 102 was a 10-year process, took a change in legislation, and took a fatal accident to get their attention.
The kids.
that's my thought about the traffic safety. Now, Kate, you've been waiting.
Yes, I had a question about
Let's
the
have it.
body cams. I didn't see
Yep.
that as one of the warrant articles on the first page
Correct.
of this thing that we got here. Are you not doing that this
So
year?
that was one of the things on my wish list, my 3 to 5 year vision plan.
Okay.
And again, as I indicated at the last meeting, it was because it was asked of us to bring some of these
Yep,
things forward.
exactly.
And could I wait? Sure, I can wait. We can't exhaust a grant. Well, we've tried that twice.
Yep.
So now we're here. So if you, as a committee, decide that you don't want this to move forward, loud and clear, no problem. I'll probably have to come back next year. And I don't want to overstay my welcome at the podium for asks.
I understand.
And as I mentioned, I think the men and women that serve your community deserve that. I think that, as I said last time, I don't want to be the one to have to explain to a spouse why we didn't have it. You know, it's an effective tool, it's an important tool, and we're behind the times. We're not leading in those things, that's for sure.
Yeah, it feels like good risk mitigation as well.
I think it's
Like
important to have, especially,
Yeah.
you know, for the trends in community transparency.
Mhm.
I think if you don't have that, people are going to say, where was it?
Mhm.
And we're going to have a whole different crew here one night asking you guys why it wasn't approved and why we didn't do it and where is it? And then it's just, we're at that day and age in society where I think it's more appropriate to have it than not.
That's one of those where we're trying to save money, it can cost us money. I think that's.
Yeah, I agree. That's
absolutely-
where I was thinking.
Yep.
too.
So in terms of it not being on the warrant article, I could be wrong, but I don't believe I was directly instructed to add it. If you guys want me to add it, it can be on there for the next one.
I would too.
I would love it.
Perfect. It'll be on the next one.
Well, we visited this 4 years ago, and I believe it was a grant we were going to qualify for, and then the program
We've
was
applied for a grant twice and we have not received it either time.
received the funds.
If we buy the body cams, does that mean we can not apply for the grant to help with that cost?
Well, there is
Down the
no
road?
There's no grant.
There's
No grant if you,
There's-
okay.
There's one grant at the moment that'll
Thank
do
you.
up to $50,000 match.
Oh.
Which is not in the
Something.
overall scope of the
But
project.
I would not
a
recommend
ton,
putting
but
that
yes.
in the warrant article, because then if we do not receive it, we don't have $50,000.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I asked Aaron, the librarian, library director, excuse me, what Plan B was. So, again, I like the idea of the 2 traffic officers. Would one accomplish some of the mission?
I can tell you that 1 is better than what we're currently doing, 2 would be ideal. As I said last time, the one bird in the hand is better than 2 in a bush. I would take that and run with it and try that. What are we going to do?
So my thought is that the body cams are $240-something thousand a year, correct? For the next 5 years? 46 or something like
Somewhere
that?
around there.
So,
If we only went with 1 traffic officer, and again, I'm a proponent of 2, if we only went with 1, does that reduce that number of 396 to 196 or to 200?
It would be closer to
Would we
that number, only because we still have to outfit.
Still need a car.
Well, again, this is one of those things where could we get by with it? We'd probably have to take one out of the line for something else. But again, the way it was proposed was to have that unit carved out.
Agreed. I'm just looking for
Yeah.
what Plan B might be.
Plan
So
B is I take what I'm given, and I make it work.
what if it was, maybe you'd only need to outfit 1 motorcycle and not 2?
We already, yeah, okay, I'm with you.
And then you can look into whether you need the car or not. I'm just saying, maybe we spend the 246 on the body cams, and we spend half the money on the traffic units this year, and then we're only at a 445 number or 450 number,
Okay.
instead of being at a I lost my math there.
It's 750 number.
Yeah, instead of being at a 650 number.
Okay.
So it's $150,000 to bring a police officer on with nothing.
I understand. So let's float that option.
Okay.
I'll give you and Justin,
Absolutely.
whatever. I don't know when we meet next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever it is.
I'll meet with Justin tomorrow. We'll have it figured out by tomorrow late day.
Because then maybe you get a little bit of a win on both fronts. Maybe you get body cams.
This is what it's about, right?
and
It's
you
coming
get
to you
one
guys.
traffic unit.
This is what it's about, though, Patrick. You're right. We got to figure out solutions to these situations that we've been in for so long, and they don't get corrected overnight. And it does take some brains and some thought processes together to find out what's in the best interest for the community to bring this forward. And I won't sit here and say that it's disappointing. I'm not going to say that. I think you're entertaining it. You realize it's a need for the community and for the people that serve the community. I think that if that's the direction that you folks want me to go in, I Captain loud and clear. Got it.
And it's also what you would prefer. Would you rather have 2 traffic officers if that happens?
Yep.
Or the body cams?
Yep.
Or 1 traffic officer and the body cams?
I think it's a loaded question the first way, because the first one means I'm being selfish and I'm looking out for the I'll use the body cams for example,
I think both scenarios
Yeah.
are a positive for public safety
Sure.
and risk mitigation for us as a town. So assume that they're equal in value as far as public safety and risk mitigation.
Yeah.
What would be your preference if you had to choose? And hopefully you
I will
don't.
take the body cams and I'll take the 1 officer.
Sold.
Right? I mean, I don't want to have
Get
to
full
choose.
for half the time.
Right. I don't want to have to choose. Do I take care of a community need that I know is needed now, or do I not give the officers the protection and the risk mitigation or liability by saying no to that? And I mean, I'm going to pick the safety of the officers, but at the same time, I know how important this is to the community. And we got to address this from a budget committee standpoint, the town council, finance. There's no other way to go about doing it. Like we can't just write a check and make it happen. Like we got to go through the steps, and that's why we're here collectively, all of us, to figure these things out.
Our insurance reduce.
I'm good.
Body cams?
Well, I would think that the secondary question you'd have to ask is you'd have to ask Primex and you'd have to ask our legal counsel, what's more fiscally protection, what's the more fiscal protection for the town? I don't know the answer to that, but I think you'd probably have to ask them that.
Was that about the
Insurance rate.
camera?
Insurance rates.
With cameras.
Gotcha. I'm sorry.
Yeah, what does that mean? And,
Right.
and probably would be advisable to ask legal counsel.
If you had a choice between a motorcycle versus car,
Yeah.
I mean, we live in New England. I mean, motorcycles are 50% of the year. Are they a beneficial tool in your
Extremely
arsenal?
beneficial. And to your point, yeah, we don't use them year round. We have a great program. I don't want to, jinx it, but we have 2 motorcycles that we lease. So when those get to their lease end agreement, they go back. We get 2 new ones. Motorcycles, if you don't ride them a lot, I don't ride a motorcycle anymore. I'm good. But I can tell you that those things, they get expensive. Officers go through clutches. They go through a lot of brakes, a lot of tires. Those things get ridden pretty hard. They're an effective tool because obviously they can get into places that cruisers can't. We use them a lot for, obviously, like parades. We use them a lot for specialty assignments too. So those things get their money's worth from a community and or PD standpoint.
Okay.
Very beneficial.
I'm curious to see how much ground you expect to cover within the 80 hours filled by 2 additional officers versus what we currently cover now with that 6.9 hours. Just so that when we're taking a look, it's not at positions and is it 1 officer and body cams or 2 officer and body cams or no additional officers and body cams. I'm curious to see what you'd be able to accomplish with these 2 officers that you're asking for. Because I'd like to take a look at more than just a number, but what...
I think what he's trying to get at is you have a guy who's been running a lot of analytics. Would you be able to bring him in at some point so that we can get a better understanding upon how much more you're able to accomplish?
Oh, I think that's an easy one. We're devoting 6.9 hours a week. And if we have 2, we're going to be up to 80 hours a week. Now, when I say up to 80, it's not people who have a sick day, people who go to training, so they may not be out there all the time. But the point is, we'd be covering up to 80 hours a week work week, Monday through Friday type of thing, out there during the commuter time. And I think that those numbers would be, if we came back here in 2 years, 3 years tops, I think we would see some pretty significant cost justification, and the results would be what would be there, I'd imagine. I don't see how you couldn't, unless we were complete fools, we didn't utilize and put the right people in those positions. There's a lot of terminology in police work, ROD, retired on duty. You've ever heard that before? Okay, see, we don't tolerate that. So I wouldn't have someone who's ROD taking that assignment who's going to stop one car a day.
Right.
We would put the right people in place that are motivated and realize this is a brand new program the community asked for. They're going to be out there and they're going to be performing. Because if not, the division commanders would be fixing that assignment. And we would obviously, we vet these things like we do when we select someone to be a DRE or an FTO or on the SWAT team. They all get vetted to fit their areas of expertise. So we would have some high chargers in that area to get out there and hear the concerns of the community.
Right.
So,
Go ahead, Justin.
Jason.
Jason, sorry, did I already call you?
Yeah. It's okay, I forgive you. I think so. To summarize what you're saying, we're at 6 hours. We'll get to 46-ish, right? We'll have more coverage. I think there's always going to be an opportunity to scale up later. I think see what we need, and then for a year, and then go from there.
Agree.
That's what we
And
can ask.
I think that again, I'm a proponent of two. However, I think that if we go with one now, which hopefully helps some of the budget constraints that we're trying to work under, it's going to be an easy sell in the future when you have the data to show what that one traffic officer is accomplishing.
Yeah,
totally. It's great. Both are well pointed out and well stated. I take my direction from you folks. It's that easy. If that's how you guys feel the most comfortable as a body, and if it goes to the voters and they feel the same way, we'll make it work, and we'll come back to you with the product and see where it goes.
Yeah, and if possible, something that could either be emailed to us or something physical, tangible that we can see, showing what we're accomplishing now, what you could possibly accomplish with the two officer and then the one additional officer. I asked for the same thing when the fire department was asking for more personnel.
That shouldn't be hard to get you. I think we already have that.
That would be phenomenal. I like to see it, and
No problem.
and then be able to move from there.
And Chief, I'd like to just say that, as Sean said earlier, I received phone calls all week, last week, and I didn't receive one person that said they didn't want two traffic officers. Just to let you know.
Well, thank you.
Every single person I spoke to wants two people on the beat, on the traffic. So just so you know, I'm a big proponent of it, and even people that were complaining about our budget increases, they want this. So I think you're going to see the voters vote
as
for
you
it.
know from being in that meeting up
Yeah.
at the State House
Absolutely.
with DOT, this is not just a Londonderry problem. This is everywhere.
Mhm.
And how else do you fix it?
Right.
And it'd be
But,
good. I hope some of those same people reach out to you guys on their opinion of one versus two.
Yeah.
You know,
I just think that the overall response for two has been outstanding, like from the community, because the amount of complaints that I get anyway about speed is quite an amount, quite a lot,
It's,
especially on West Road. So,
come to the traffic safety committees. You'll hear them there all the time.
Now, Chief, you can have that assignment.
No, Chief, I have a separate question regarding
You guys can peruse that or make copies.
regarding our body cams and the company that you're proposing to go through. Would it be worth reaching out to them to see if we did a larger one-time payment to them for a reduction on the total program?
I believe didn't we try that with them? Or that was the Taser too?
We attempted that with the Taser, and their pricing model is their pricing model. So we tried to sweeten it the best we could, especially leveraging some ARPA funds at the time.
Tim, what I think he's saying is similar, or not similar, but essentially use it as like a down payment. So that way that 246 on an annual basis, we're still paying it, but it's no
Yes.
longer 256. It's now.
They will do that. It won't change the bottom line number.
Right. So we'll still have a total of about 1.233 million, but depending on if you decide to use UFB, the lease payment for the 5 years will decrease similar to a car down payment.
Right, so for example, if we did use a bit of UFB money on that, then our future year payments would be reduced.
Correct. But again, the bottom line number is not going to change.
Right,
We,
and I don't
we
think
did attempt that with the Taser. So.
Right, and I don't think using UFB, continuously every year on this, I DRA wise might not be appropriate, but on a one-time payment could make more sense on a long term on that.
Yeah, but we're not paying interest to this company for this lease agreement for the body cams or whatever, right? Whereas we're making interest on the money that's in the undesignated fund.
Correct.
So potentially, no, sorry, Ted, but I think if we use the money from the undesignated fund balance to pay this bill, that's not really saving anything.
Justin, how much money do we have in the undesignated fund balance?
We currently have 7.8 million.
So approximately $8 million.
Yep.
How much interest do you get on what's the interest rate you get on our investments?
Between 3 and 4%, depending on the CD term, as well as depending on which bank I'm.
Cents, $320,000.
It's likely going to be decreasing with the upcoming cuts, but I'd say about 3.5 is a safe estimate.
So $300,000 we get in interest off the undesignated fund balance, more or less.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would
Good to keep a good balance right now.
It is, yes, that makes sense. No, just looking at different options.
Just throwing it out there.
Of course.
The body cams would be a warrant article, or would that be in the proposed budget?
That would be a warrant article.
Would the warrant article have to state the full cost over the 5 years, or would it just state the 1 year payment?
It would be similar to what we did last year, where it is the life of it, but the actual cost is the 1 year payment, and it would say it'll honestly it would be very similar to the vehicles is probably the best way to put it, where it says the total, but then it says what the tax impact is.
Go ahead, Jason.
Not for them, actually. I have a question for council. What do you need from the budget committee? Do you want us to vote to advise you? Again, I'm one guy. You know, you heard my opinion. I just don't want to represent the entire budget committee. And think there's other opinions.
I think the dialogue is healthy. I think that, it invokes thought. And at the end of the day, the council in partnership with the budget committee and the department heads in the town and finance and everyone else will move forward on the best process.
Okay.
So I think what you're doing right now is fine.
Okay, no motions,
Yeah,
okay.
And I'm one of 5.
Okay.
I mean, let me be more specific. What I meant earlier by saying is that I would like to see you go to your meeting and come back with something similar to what we did. What we did was we came back and we said, okay, community, this is what we're presenting. This is what we think is the the need for the community. People put out a citizens petition last year and wanted the budget committee to put the whole budget together. What I'd like to see is I'd like to see what you would do if you had to put the budget together.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're doing. We already have a list of questions and are working on them, and that's traditionally what we've done is we come up with a list and we address those questions at these meetings. Obviously, we'll talk at our meeting on Thursday as well, but that's pretty much what's happening.
I take that point. I'm just trying to be responsive, right?
Well, I wasn't responding to you, Jason. I was responding to
No, to John.
Yeah.
Right. So he's looking for us to make our own idea, right?
Come back and say, you know what,
Right.
you're all wet. We can do this for $8 million. We don't need $44 million. I mean,
Right.
I'm making that up, obviously. Or come back and say, you know what, we've listened to the needs, and you all need a 25% increase. And please make sure you guys say it now. Okay, but come back with something that says, okay, this is our position. Great that you're asking questions, but what's your position?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what I'm asking you.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
That's
for.
not as easy as it sounds. There are 5 of you, and it's hard for
kidding.
you
We
to
just
come up
vote.
with a collective position. Take 7 of us and try and come up with a collective position. That really doesn't work all that well.
But that's what they elected.
That's
us to
why.
do.
That's why we vote before
So we vote.
the town meeting day, so that our recommendations are on the ballot. We don't have to come up with a 7-person collective agreement on something. We just continue the discussion.
That's why I was trying to throw a guideline at it, because I thought just doing a general come back with something with 7 different opinions, you couldn't come back with something on us and we'd be able to do it. So, hey.
Yeah.
I think out of our
Right.
meeting this upcoming Thursday, there might be 1 or 2 different consensuses coming from us on the committee of where we want to go. Either one line of let's make some changes, let's make some reductions, and another let's give some money. So I'll be interested to see after. I want to be able to sit and marinate off the past couple budget meetings for our upcoming meeting on Thursday and come in with some with some different ideas that we can discuss amongst ourselves to bring forward in December.
That's that's my point. Like, I think we need to vote on it as a committee and make a formal position of, hey, budget committee advises the town council to do X. That's it.
I'll give you an example. Before we had SB2, what would happen in these meetings is the town council would turn to the town manager and go, 2% reduction across the board. Go take it. Come back and tell us what that is. And the town manager at that time would go off and he would say, you take 2% off of every single person's budget with no rhyme or reason to it. Everybody has to give up 2%. And then that's what they would come back with. If you want to get rid of 4%, $1.6 million, are you going to take 4% off of everybody's line item? You know, we're asking the staff to go back and figure out what they're going to reduce by 4%. What's your recommendation? Is 4% the right number? Is it 1%? Is it go up by 3%? People in the community made it clear that, you know, they want to hear more from the budget committee. What I'm saying to you is come back and tell us, you know, what do you want to do? I'm not trying to make it difficult or that you all have to agree about it. It can be 4-3.
I don't think that the statement last year with the citizens petition was a statement that they wanted to hear more from the budget committee. I think that the budget committee was very involved in the process last year. And some of that is a credit to you, John, that when warrant articles were discussed and the town council was getting ready to vote on whether a warrant article would go to the ballot, you asked and solicited the budget committee's opinion in those meetings, and we weighed in on those articles. And I feel like collectively, town council and budget committee shaped those articles that went to the ballot last year. And I thought that process went well. I don't think it was as smooth the year before. And so I do feel like we are involved in the conversation, and we're influencing. And as you can see tonight, we're influencing what the warrant articles might be through these conversations.
I think it's nice when there's consensus, right? But otherwise, if there's not consensus, if you're split, right? Like, what am I supposed to say? Well, how are they supposed to take that?
Well, that's why on the breakdown on when you guys do vote, for people see that and make a decision based on, okay, you know, and when I was on the budget committee, and I'm sure other members of the council who are on as well, why we were asked during deliberative, why did you vote in favor? Why did you vote against it? And not just at your meeting, not just at a budget workshop, you articulate your why in pro or against, you know, for or against, and I think that does matter when the voters go into the voter booth.
So let me rephrase. What I'm really saying to you is I'm out of ideas.
Yeah.
Really looking for more. That's really what I'm looking for at the end of the day. Is I don't have any ideas where else to go with this, because we've as we said, the tax burden's 5.4%. We've run pretty lean.
Agreed.
Justin, I have a question for you. With our governmental system with the DRA, can we just arbitrarily cut 4%?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure what we can or cannot
The
do.
only time, 4%, yeah. The only time that you're not able to cut is at deliberative. You can't cut more than 10%.
Okay.
Outside of that, you also can't add more than 10% at deliberative. Outside of that, you can, yes.
So this conversation all started because of what Governor Chris Sununu had stated the other day. Now, mind you, they are accomplishing this mostly by cutting out positions that are not being filled right now. And they have even said out there in multiple different departments that these are positions that have not been filled for years. And there's 10s, 20s, 30s of positions in each department that they have never been able to fill. But yet they are budgeted for those positions. So I don't think that going off of what the governor wants for the state, when they are actually maybe able to accomplish what they want to do by cutting out budgets for positions that have never been filled, is really responsible on us as good stewards of the town and our employees.
It's $2 on the tax rate responsible?
I don't think anybody's suggesting that.
I mean, no, I know, but I'm saying in the same token, because no one was suggesting that, no one's suggesting this either. We're going through the exercise to see. We've had plenty of citizens come up to the mic and say that they'd like to see something to help their tax rate. They're struggling and they want an answer. And so in the same method, I just want to show them what that would look like, what kind of services that would degrade, and go, this is what that looks like, because they saw $2 on the tax rate. This is what you get for it, and that's how much that costs. I'd like them to see it the other way too.
Are we good with
I
PD?
completely agree with that.
Yeah.
That's 100%, I agree.
Now, Justin, how much of our tax rate would go up if we just went off of the general budget of what, the proposed budget is?
Do we need to keep them up?
So that's difficult to answer because this year's tax rate has not been set yet.
It has not been set
I'm
up.
waiting. They're finalizing out the final form. So any calculation we do will be based on 23. So you're looking at a 2-year increase rather than just a 1 year.
Okay.
So I'm not able to give you that answer.
So when I was doing the numbers and everything else, it was 54 cents before we took the 285,000 out. So you take the 284,000 out, that reduces it by 4 to 5 cents. You're looking at right around 50 cents.
Okay.
Just the way we sit at the.
So not the $2.
No,
the $2 would be as if everything was actually put in.
Yeah, so the stuff before, and I wrote this down, was 54 cents before the line. The stuff I called frosting after the line was $1.94 was the tax rate, and so I wrote this down.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct, and none of that is included, or most of those items are not included
Yep.
in the proposed.
But we went through the
operating budget.
exercise. We went through the
Right.
exercise of each of those, and we went through it over 2 sessions.
Right.
So
But just to be clear, what's in the budget in front of you, none
it's
of
not.
those.
And
Right.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Yep.
What Sean's saying is and kind of what I'm saying to the budget committee is if we cut 1.6 million, what does that do to essential services? Period.
So what?
80% is salaries and benefits. Sorry.
All good. And would that something that you'd be able to have prepared for us by our meeting this Thursday, or?
Oh, no.
It was worth the ask.
No, I usually I'll say I'll try my best. That one I got to be honest. No, nope.
The quick back the napkin math that I just did, if this is correct, if it's 1.6 million that we're trying to cut from the budget, and it's 62,500 for every 1 cent, we're looking at 25 cents on the tax rate, which is about $10.66 a month per household, is what we're looking at cutting from the budget.
But I definitely think that 1.6 million or whatever that number is, 1.7 million, cuts into services.
Yes.
So one thing I do want to say is it's going to be very difficult to get to that level without personnel being one of the items. I will try my absolute best, but
You're not going to get there without cutting. No.
Exactly. You're not going to be able to operate at that point.
Sean is just asking for
No,
a
I know,
proposal.
I'm
He's not
not-
suggesting it. He's just asking for a
I'm
proposal.
not saying he is.
Other people,
I'm-
other people ask for $100,000. He's just asking for that. That's all he's asking for.
Again, I'm not saying he is. I just want to be upfront so we are aware that.
He's not saying he's going to do it. He's just asking for it.
Again, I'm not saying he is, but similar to how I just want to make sure we're all aware that it's going to be very difficult without that. I will do my absolute best to avoid that, but I may not come back with 4%, and it may be this. That's why. If that's okay, I'd rather give you guys that than.
I think the voters would like to see that.
Yeah.
If you guys are good with that, where we can do this without personnel aspects.
Yeah. I'm good with that. Let's do
The
it.
goal will be 4%.
Yeah.
But I'm telling you right now, I can't promise that without getting that. It's going to be difficult, but I'll try my best to do that.
No, I just appreciate the exercise.
Chief, do you have
Thank
something
you.
first? Or?
I didn't know if you had anything for me.
Oh, no. So just to address what John said,
Chief,
is
you're good.
We good to let him
Okay,
go.
before
I'm
we
good.
sit down, I just want my homework assignment. Sir, you asked me for what one cop and all the fixins would be for a number?
Sure.
Okay,
With body-worn cameras.
yeah. Okay, we'll get that. And then, Joe, you asked me for the traffic data. I gave you that.
Yep.
Anybody else need anything else?
You guys are good.
Okay, if you guys
Thank you,
ask me to
gentlemen.
cut 44,000 from my budget, oh boy.
So so just to address what John said is like 80%.
Thank you, Chief.
Hey, can we have one at a time, please?
Yes. 80% is, of course, individuals. So if you're looking at $45 million, that's $36 million for the individuals that work here. So you're down to $9 million. So we're trying to take, 1.6 out of 9?
Yeah, around that.
That gets difficult.
Yeah.
It's an exercise. That's
Yes.
all he's asking.
Yeah.
It's not
Yep.
cast in stone.
So-
He's just asking for something to be done.
When's the next budget workshop, Mr. Chair?
2 weeks.
December.
December 2nd.
Yeah, so plenty of time.
So I feel like we've covered quite a few departments tonight. And maybe we should pick up,
That's
when we
right.
talk to fire
But if you need
on December 2nd.
Page.
Okay.
Can I finish up with 2 police questions?
Sure.
Oh,
No, I'm good. I don't need Chief. I think Justin can answer.
What do we
these
got?
questions. Uniformed officers. There was a 41% increase in overtime in the default budget.
Yes.
How do we get a 41% increase in overtime in a default?
With everything that's going on, we redid how we calculate default for the overtime for public safety. So historically, we would take prior year's budget and apply any percentage increase that would be part of the contracts. We then would take the amount spent on average over the past 5 years, and then we would take what the average overtime rate is for the personnel for the next year times the average hours that were used over the past 5 years. This year, we did the average of 3 years overtime that is spent, or the overtime hours that have been gone, as well as the average overtime for the personnel next year.
And training.
And no, he's looking at just the overtime line now.
Everyone's rate also goes up.
Yes.
Because they're in a negotiated CBA that's in effect. So everyone gets their increase and raise, which means their overtime rate has now also increased.
Sure. That I'd expect that, and you've seen over the last 3 prior years 6.6, 5%, 6.8% increases in overtime. 41% seems.
So again, that's taking 3 years of average. It's taking the past 3 years of overtime hours.
So I guess I'm confused on how that can impact default. I understand your change of methodology and your proposed budget, but how can you work that into default?
The argument is we're contractually obligated to fill those positions, and the best way that we can average it out is doing that.
Okay.
If you'd like me to go back to the old way, I'm willing to, because it acted as a cap, but it will result
Seeing the
in a
calculation might be
significantly decreased. What?
Seeing the calculation might be helpful.
see that too.
And then
For you right now.
Too, Ryan, a lot of that has to do with like the minimum staffing requirements, what we must fill. A lot of times when we have, if the staffing is 4 or 5 in 1, somebody calls out sick or a vacation day, most of the time we won't fill it, to try to keep that line down. But if we're at that minimum staffing, then we have to fill it. We fill with sergeants, patrol officers, detectives don't, SROs don't.
yeah, so I think similar to the fire conversation, we're budgeting full staff. If we're also budgeting higher overtime for the inevitability of being short-staffed, we're kind of double counting in the budget.
I see where you could see that, but however, if, for example, if we're budgeting for 68 and we reduce that and then I staff up, then I can't fulfill those obligations that I'm required to do because now that number has dropped. I'm going to go over budget. We're going to be here next year with a whole different problem. So we can't fill up because of those lines. So we have to be appropriate when what shifts we fill when people go out with workers' comp or FMLA or vacations, all those things.
What's your minimum?
What's that?
What's your minimum staffing?
Staffing depends what shift and what location. We're talking townside or airport. 'Cause
Well, airport's covered, so I don't care about
but
that.
they're all different. So minimum staffing, I don't love advertising. It's kind of embarrassing, but if you want me to tell you, 3, 4, and 3. So 3 on days, 4 on afternoons, and 3 on mids.
And what's your budgeted staffing?
Budget staffing is for 68.
So,
That includes command staff, et cetera.
okay.
You have a second question, or?
So
Just for next time, or in the.
I can tell you right now, I have it up. So for UOD, just UOD, we budgeted, the average 3-year average was 12,830 hours, 0.92. The average overtime rate for those individuals in that category is $64.36, which is where you get to the 825,000.
Okay, yeah, again, if you can send me the calculation, that'd be helpful.
Yep.
And then just for next time, management services going up 23%. In
Is it IT?
in IT, yeah.
Yep.
I
I
need an
have
answer
that
right now.
calculation as well. That was from their public safety IT coordinator. And it's essentially all the contracts we have for management services for
It's
the
gone
IT.
up. a lot.
Well, it's that fund, you have to keep in mind, has also been underfunded, where we're trying to get it back in slowly to where it should be. So I believe if you look, it's likely been overspent the past several years.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that, but that's what I figured. It's been overspent historically on that, so this is to kind of put it all rather than doing it all at once to the taxpayers. It's one of those, again, 3 to 5 years to try to right-size it rather than put it all on at once.
And the IT director at the PD had also asked that all of his lines be put into, or all of the funds be put into management services, including phone and all the PD services. So you'll see that nothing
Yeah,
is budgeted.
I assumed that was the case.
Yeah. And then he has a list of all of his contracts that he has for IT software and how much it costs. So it's not an arbitrary number.
Licensing fees.
Yes. Yep.
I believe that. Just, yeah.
Yep, I can get that for you. I'll email that off to you.
Thank you.
All right, so just
So another number for you guys to keep in mind as you're looking at this 4% decreases is there's another project that we've been working on around healthcare costs. The total, what we pay for medical healthcare costs right now is $5.7 million. It's going up 11.6%. That's $661,000. So when you're looking at the lines.
And that's on top of a 19% increase a couple of years ago?
That's right. So when you're saying reduce by, the only way you get there is as Justin so candidly pointed out you start looking at headcount, because that affects all lines. But that's a big part of the increase we're looking at this year is the medical health care line.
Ted?
I had one other question I had tasked you guys with, and it's regarding the telephone line item. I wasn't sure if you guys in IT were able to look further into the option I had suggested.
So we had IT look into it, and one of the items we had discussed is essentially when it comes to the public safety buildings, police, fire, without flat out saying no, the answer is going to be no, because we need to make sure that essentially a 5-second delay in it coming could be life or death in those situations. In terms of the, town hall, library, senior center, cable, we're looking further into that.
Okay.
And looking at essentially a cost-benefit analysis versus what we've already put into the infrastructure and walking away from versus what we'd be saving in terms of switching over.
Okay.
But we are looking into that. But as I just figured, I'd flat out say in terms of public safety, that 5 seconds is huge.
Oh, agreed. I completely agree.
All right, so if I heard you correctly, you're asking to pause on the rest of the discussion for the other department heads and continue on the second. You also have your meeting this Thursday.
Yes.
At 7 p.m. here, where you guys can discuss further.
Yes.
All right, so at that time, you're saying you guys are all set for the budget workshop. We can close the workshop.
I think we continue it on December 2nd.
All right. Good.
Otherwise, we're going to be, if we start the conversation about fire, I feel like we're going to be here for another hour.
All right, well, thank you for that. So you guys can stay or go? We'll
Can we step in Sunnycrest real quick, Budget Committee?
I don't know if you can do that.
Hold on. Yeah. You're welcome.
I don't think you can do that.
I can't do that.
Nope, sorry.
Okay. I'll send you guys something about the community services grants tomorrow. I just have to speak to Justin after the meeting about one thing, and you'll have the community service grant applications tomorrow to be discussed on Thursday to make our decisions on them. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
You're good.
Patrick, I sent them to everybody.
Oh, you sent them to everybody?
Yes.
All right, disregard that last statement.
All right. Moving on.